The entire salon froze when the mirror exploded into 1,000 pieces, and standing in the shattered glass was something that should not have been there. A dark figure with glowing red eyes staring directly at them. Screams filled the air as clients stumbled backward, their hands flying to their heads, feeling their once beautiful hair, now brittle and cold like dried grass. Destiny stood paralyzed behind her styling chair, her hands trembling as she realized the spirit she had been feeding for years was no longer hiding. Destiny Okafor was a 32-year-old hairdresser with smooth dark skin, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that always seemed to calculate before they spoke. She had built her salon, Divine Touch, from nothing, transforming it into the most exclusive beauty destination in Port Harcourt. Women traveled from across Rivers State just to sit in her chair. Her fingers were magic, they said. Her braids were perfection. But what they did not know was that Destiny's gift came from a deal she made 5 years ago with something that lived inside an old bronze mirror she found at a riverside market. That mirror now lay in pieces on the marble floor, and the thing inside it was free. Destiny's chest tightened as she looked around at the 5 women in her salon. Clients who had trusted her, who had paid her thousands of naira for beauty that was never truly theirs. Among them was Ngozi Chukwu, a 24-year-old pastor's daughter with kind eyes and a quiet strength that made Destiny uneasy from the moment she walked in. Ngozi sat calmly in the corner, her lips moving in silent prayer, her hands folded over her Bible. It was Ngozi's presence that had broken everything. 5 years earlier, Destiny had been desperate. Her small salon was failing, her rent was overdue, and her younger brother needed school fees she could not afford. She had walked along the Bonny River one evening, tears streaming down her face, begging God for a miracle. That was when she saw the old woman sitting by the water, her face hidden beneath a dark wrapper, her bony fingers holding up a bronze mirror that gleamed under the moonlight. "You want success?" the woman had asked without looking up. "You want women to worship the ground you walk on?" Destiny had nodded, too broken to question how this stranger knew her thoughts. The woman smiled, revealing teeth stained black. "Take this mirror. Speak the words I teach you. Your hands will create beauty no one can resist. But remember, every gift has a price." Destiny had taken the mirror, repeated the strange incantation, and within weeks her salon was packed. Women left her chair glowing, radiant, transformed. But they always came back. They had to. Now, as the spirit hovered in the center of the salon, its smoky form twisting and expanding, Destiny understood the true price. Every woman she had styled had given a piece of herself to the mirror. Her joy, her confidence, her very essence. They became hollow, always, needing more beauty because they had lost the ability to feel beautiful on their own. Destiny had fed the spirit with their souls, and in return, it had made her wealthy. But she had never imagined it would one day break free. Ngozi had not wanted to come to Divine Touch. Her mother had insisted, saying that every bride needed to look perfect on her wedding day. Ngozi was getting married in 2 weeks to Chidi, a kind and humble man who loved God and loved her even more. She had fasted for 3 days before this appointment, praying for protection, wisdom, and clarity. She did not know why, but something in her spirit had warned her about this place. When Destiny touched Ngozi's hair, the room grew cold. Destiny's hands, usually smooth and confident, began to tremble. She tried to speak the incantation under her breath, the words that always made the mirror glow and the beauty flow through her fingers. But this time, nothing happened. Instead, a sharp pain shot through her wrists, and she stumbled backward. Ngozi opened her eyes and looked at Destiny with a calm that made the older woman's blood run cold. "You are in bondage," Ngozi said softly, "and you have bound others with you." Before Destiny could respond, Ngozi began to pray aloud. Her voice was steady, unwavering, filled with authority. The other women in the salon, Mrs. Adana, a 40-year-old banker with tired eyes, Blessing, a 19-year-old university student obsessed with her appearance, Kioma, a 35-year-old businesswoman who had not smiled in months, and Ifeoma, a 52-year-old widow who had spent her pension on Destiny's services, all turned to look at Ngozi. They did not understand what was happening, but something inside them stirred, a memory of who they used to be before they ever sat in Destiny's chair. The bronze mirror on the wall began to rattle violently. Destiny shouted for Ngozi to stop praying, but the young woman did not. Her voice grew louder, calling on the name of Jesus, declaring freedom and breaking chains that no one could see but everyone could feel. The mirror cracked down the center, a long, jagged line splitting the glass. Then, with a sound like thunder, it exploded. The spirit emerged from the shattered pieces, towering over them all. It was neither man nor woman, neither solid nor smoke. Its eyes burned red, and its voice was 100 voices speaking at once. "You belong to me," it hissed, looking directly at Destiny. "You gave yourself to me. You fed me. You are mine." Destiny fell to her knees, her body shaking. She wanted to deny it, to scream that she had only wanted to survive, but deep down she knew the truth. She had chosen this. She had chosen power over principle. The other women began to see their reflections in the broken glass scattered across the floor, but these were not the reflections they expected. Mrs. Adana saw herself as a hollow shell, her eyes empty, her smile fake. Blessing saw herself as a skeleton wrapped in expensive clothes, her beauty a mask over nothingness. Kioma saw herself weeping, her hands reaching out for something she could never touch. Ifeoma saw herself fading, disappearing, becoming invisible. They screamed, realizing for the first time what they had lost. "I didn't know," Destiny whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know it would do this to them." The spirit laughed, a cruel sound that made the walls tremble. "You knew," it said. "You always knew. You just did not care." Destiny looked up at the women around her, their faces filled with fear, confusion, and anger. She had taken from them. She had stolen their joy, their peace, their sense of self, all so she could build an empire of lies. Mrs. Adana was the first to speak. Her voice was shaking, but there was fire in her eyes. "I came to you because I wanted to feel beautiful again. My husband stopped noticing me. My children grew up and left. I felt invisible. You promised me I would shine." She stepped forward, her hands clenched into fists. "But every time I left your salon, I felt worse. I needed to come back. I spent money I didn't have. I ignored my family. I became obsessed. What did you do to me?" Destiny had no answer. She looked at Blessing, the young girl who had once been confident and full of life, now so dependent on beauty treatments that she barely attended her classes. She looked at Kioma, the businesswoman who had lost her company because she spent all her time and money chasing perfection. She looked at Ifeoma, the widow who had nothing left but her weekly appointments at Divine Touch. Destiny had destroyed them all, and she had done it willingly. The spirit turned its burning gaze toward Ngozi. "You," it growled, "you are the one who broke my hold." Ngozi stood, her Bible clutched to her chest, her face calm despite the chaos around her. "I did not break anything," she said clearly. "The power of God did. You have no authority here. You never did. You only had the authority these women gave you through fear and desperation." The spirit lunged toward her, but an invisible barrier stopped it midair. It shrieked, clawing at the Kong Chi, but it could not reach her. Ngozi continued, "Destiny made a choice, but she can still make another one. These women made choices, but they can still be free. You are a liar and a thief, and in the name of Jesus, I command you to release them." Her voice rang out like a bell, clear and unshakable. Destiny felt something shift inside her. For the first time in 5 years, she felt a flicker of hope. But the spirit was not finished. It turned back to her, its voice dripping with venom. "If you break our deal, you will lose everything. Your salon, your wealth, your reputation. You will be nothing again." Destiny closed her eyes, remembering the desperation that had driven her to the river that night. She had wanted so badly to matter, to be seen, to be someone. But at what cost? Destiny opened her eyes and looked at the women around her. They were broken, yes, but they were still alive. They could still be saved. She took a deep breath and spoke, her voice trembling but resolute. "I reject you," she said to the spirit. "I reject the deal. I reject the power. I reject everything you gave me. I choose freedom. I choose truth." The spirit let out a roar that shook the entire building. The lights flickered, the walls cracked, and the remaining mirrors in the salon shattered one by one. Destiny felt a searing pain in her chest, as if something was being ripped out of her. She fell to the floor, gasping, her body convulsing. Ngozi rushed to her side, placing a hand on her shoulder, praying with every ounce of faith she had. The other women watched in stunned silence as the spirit began to shrink, its form flickering like a dying flame. It screamed curses, threats, promises of revenge, but its voice grew weaker with every word. Finally, with one last desperate wail, it dissolved into smoke and vanished. The salon fell silent. The oppressive weight that had hung in the air was gone. Destiny lay on the floor, weak and exhausted. But for the first time in years, she felt light. But was this really the end? As the women slowly began to gather themselves, they realized that freedom came with consequences. Mrs. Adana looked at her hands and saw wrinkles she had not noticed before. Blessing touched her hair and felt its natural texture returning, no longer supernaturally smooth. Kioma looked in a broken piece of mirror and saw her real face, older, tired, but undeniably hers. Ifeoma felt tears streaming down her face, not of sadness, but of relief. They turned to Destiny, who was still on the floor, struggling to sit up. The anger they had felt moments before was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Pity. Why? Kioma asked, her voice breaking. Why did you do this to us? Destiny looked up at her, tears streaming down her face. Because I was afraid, she whispered. I was afraid of being poor, afraid of being nobody, afraid of failing. So I made a deal with something I didn't understand, and I convinced myself it was worth it. Mrs. Adana knelt beside her. You took from us, Destiny. You stole years of our lives. You made us slaves to something we couldn't even see. Destiny nodded, unable to speak. But, Mrs. Adana continued, her voice softer now, you also just set us free. You could have kept the deal. You could have let that thing take one of us to save yourself. But you didn't. The other women exchanged glances. They were still hurt, still angry, but they also saw a woman who had been just as trapped as they were. Over the following weeks, word spread about what had happened at Divine Touch. Some people called Destiny a witch and demanded she be arrested. Others called her a victim and said she deserved a second chance. The police investigated, but there was no physical evidence of wrongdoing, only broken mirrors, traumatized women, and a story no one could fully explain. Destiny closed her salon permanently. She sold everything she owned and used the money to compensate the women she had harmed. She gave Mrs. Adana enough to cover the therapy sessions she now needed. She paid for Blessing's tuition so the girl could finish school without financial stress. She helped Kioma restart her business. She gave Ifeoma a monthly stipend to help her rebuild her life. It was not enough to undo the damage, but it was a start. Ngozi visited Destiny one last time before her wedding. She found the older woman living in a small room, working as a cleaner in a local church. Destiny looked up, shame flooding her face. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she said quietly. Ngozi smiled gently. You're right, you don't. None of us deserve forgiveness. But that's what makes grace so powerful. She placed a small Bible on the table. You made a terrible choice, Destiny, but God is still giving you a chance to make better ones. Destiny picked up the Bible, her hands trembling, and for the first time in years, she prayed a prayer that came from her heart, not from a script given to her by a demon. Months later, Destiny stood in front of a small gathering at the same church where she now worked. Her hair was natural, her face free of makeup, her clothes simple. She looked different, not glamorous, not powerful, but real. She told her story, every painful detail, to a room full of women who had come seeking beauty, success, and validation. I thought the mirror would give me everything I wanted, she said, her voice steady. But it only reflected back the emptiness I already felt inside. She paused, looking at each face in the crowd. True beauty doesn't come from a mirror, a product, or even from another person's approval. It comes from knowing who you are and whose you are. I lost myself chasing an image that was never real. Don't make the same mistake I did. The women listened, some with tears in their eyes, others nodding in recognition. They had all felt that same desperation, that same hunger to be seen, to be valued. As Destiny finished speaking, Ngozi stood in the back of the room smiling. She had kept her promise to pray for Destiny every day, and she could see the transformation happening slowly but surely. The mirror was broken, but the woman behind it was being rebuilt. The greatest beauty is not what the world sees, but what God restores when we finally let go of the lies we've been holding on to. Destiny looked out at the women before her and asked, "What would you have done if you were in my shoes? What mirror are you still holding on to that you need to break?" So that's the story of Destiny and the mirror's curse. But here's my question for you. Do you think Destiny truly changed, or was she just scared of the consequences? And more importantly, what would you have done in her position? Comment below and let's discuss. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe to the Rob channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, true beauty doesn't come from a mirror, a product, or anyone's approval. It comes from knowing who you are and whose you are. I'll see you in the next story. Stay blessed. Stay